Sound good?
Great.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, lots of other times and lots of other places, but it's TPH time, TPH live from my living room and the living room of many of the greatest teachers on the planet. Every day we do 5 minutes of meditation suitable for total beginners, absolute beginners, or seasoned pros. And the goal here is to give you a little bit of a sanity break in your day and then also to create a bit of a community. So our teacher today is Susan Kaiser Greenland, beaming in from the left coast. And Susan is, for those of you who haven't followed her work, really one of the pioneers in terms of teaching meditation to parents and kids. And she's written a great book called Mindful Games, and it comes with the Mindful Games activity cards that I actually recently pulled out because I was going to do some of these with my son. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I'm going to do some soon, assuming he is willing to pay attention to me. Susan, you wanted to talk. First of all, thank you and hello. Thank you for coming on. And I know you wanted to talk today about being helpful.
Yeah, because there's a lot of talk right now in our country about people being self-involved or being narcissistic sometimes, maybe a little before the pandemic, but it's a common thread. But for those of us who work with caregivers and those of us who work with parents, we don't see that so much. We see people wanting to be helpful, but sometimes we can be helpful from a place of confusion or reactivity as opposed to from a place of clarity and discernment. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this helpfulness and how wonderful and how beautiful that quality and that intention to be helpful is, and how we can sometimes trip over ourselves and it can backfire if that helpfulness is not coming from a place of clarity and wisdom and discernment, but instead is coming from a place more of confusion and reactivity.
So just to put a little meat on the bone, so maybe I'm pantomiming some version of being helpful, but actually I'm just making it all about me, or I have some need that I'm trying to get met under the guise of being helpful?
That's the worst case scenario, but I don't think it's really that often me related. I think it's very often we really think we know better than the situation. So we think we can go in and fix it because it's from a genuine intention, a genuine desire to be helpful. Caregivers don't often get that caught up in the me part. Many of them, they're really trying to be helpful, but in a way they lean over their skis because it comes out of a fear in a way, and we all know how our brains work, and that when we start functioning from a place of fear, something's going to go wrong. Our kids are not going to be okay. Our kids are not going to be safe. Then we move into a more reactive place and our bandwidth necessarily narrows. And with that narrow bandwidth, we really have to work at it to widen that bandwidth out. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because what you said about being helpful, it's coming from a place of me, is like a classic caregiver response where if we just go back and think it's coming from a place of basic goodness, the wanting to help is coming from a place of really wanting things to be better for our families, and these fundamental qualities of kindness and compassion and goodness that are inside all of us. But then we tend to beat ourselves up, and that too is part of this negativity bias. We focus on the things about us that we think could use a little improvement, and not on the things that are really wonderful qualities that all of us have of really genuinely wanting to help. Does that make sense?
It does. You said a lot of things, and to me, at least, they all make sense. I want to invite people to submit questions as we head into this meditation on this issue specifically of being helpful, or being in the neighborhood of helpful, or not being helpful at all, even when you're trying to be helpful. This is an incredibly relevant subject, so send those questions in, and we'll get to them on the backside of this meditation. But do you want to? I'll press mute, let you take over, and we'll do a little meditation.
Sure. That sounds good.
Yeah, and I'm muting myself because, as you just saw, there are small creatures.
I love that I hear somebody saying "dad" in the background, and how perfect is that for the meditation for parents and kids?
Yeah, Mommy's in that room over there. Oh, she isn't? Okay. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Save me. Help me meditate.
All right. Okay, so let's start by just finding a comfortable posture. And that posture can be either sitting or standing or lying down. Just know that if at any time you start to feel uncomfortable or this isn't working for you, you can change your posture. It's okay. And I want you to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. If not, leave them open. If you're keeping your eyes open, then just softly gaze at something in front of you. And if you're sitting, rest your hands easy on your lap. Now, sometimes in a pandemic or any other time when our nervous systems are a little jacked up, we have something that we think of as speedy energy. It's when we feel the energy kind of racing in our body. So if that's happening to you, one of the things you can do, I've learned from one of my teachers, Soni Rinpoche, is you can just take your arms for a second and just shake them. Just shake them like this if you're feeling at all like you've got energy to let go of, and then just drop them back in the lap. Another thing you can do if you feel like you're getting a lot of energy or strong emotions coming up that's overwhelming, just think of taking your breath further down, deeper into your belly, and then breathing out with a deep belly breath with a special emphasis on the out breath like this. So now you've got two different strategies you can use if during this practice you start to feel strong emotions coming up and they start to feel a little bit overwhelming. You can either just release that energy by shaking and then putting your hands back on your lap, or a nice strong exhale. So with those tips, now let's start to practice. I want you to start by just feeling the top of your head, noticing the sensations in the top of your head. You can imagine that you've got a knit cap and that you're pulling that cap over the crown of your head, over your forehead, and down the back of your head. See what that feels like. Really feel your head. Now bring your attention into your forehead and your eye area and soften around your eyes. And if this isn't working for you, that's okay. You can just notice that exhale and breathe a little bit harder, or move your attention to the sensation of breathing, the sounds in the room. But if you want to stay with this body scan, now just feel your face. Notice any tension and soften. Maybe you want to move your jaw. Feel your back. Feel your shoulders and let them drop. If you like, you can put a hand over your heart and just feel the movement of breath against your hand. Breathing in, your hand goes up. Breathing out, your hand goes down. Notice if there's any tension in your shoulder if you've got your hand over your heart. And if there is, just let it go and soften. Notice your upper arms. Feel your elbows, your lower arms, and your hands. Feel the breathing in your tummy. And again, if you want to put your hand right there and feel the breath against your hand, you can. Feel your upper legs. See if you can feel your knees. Feel your lower legs and your ankles and your feet. And now let's just rest here for a second. And let's just notice the activity in our minds. Not going to block anything. We're not going to change anything. Just going to notice what shows up. Meditation is all about awareness in that mind of you, that a mind of yours that's knowing that thoughts are coming up. That's awareness. It's a time to celebrate. You know where your mind is, and then bring it back to just resting right here, right now, in the present moment. Now we're going to close this meditation pretty quickly, but before we do, I want you to think of, if you can, of something in your mind that you're really grateful for right now. In times like a pandemic, it's easy to focus on the worries and the concerns and the tough things. Not going to forget about the worries, but let's broaden our perspective and bring to mind something that really is making us happy right in this moment. Something good. It can just be that we have this time for ourselves. It can just be the smell of a flower, the sun on our face. Whatever it is, just notice. And if you're comfortable saying silently thank you, I encourage you to do that. Now we're just going to practice for a couple more beats, but before we close the practice, if you have your eyes closed, I'd love it if you just opened your eyes. Have them softly ahead of you. Try not to focus hard on anything. And see if you can bring that quality of clarity and that quality of concentration that you have while you practice into your practice with your eyes open. Now, if you're ready, you can wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes and move around and come back into the room. And Dan, I have been so enjoying watching your son in the background. He's so cool.
Well, he smacked my tush a couple of times during the course of the meditation, so that was like the Zen.
I saw that. I like that too.
The Zen priest sometimes smack you with a stick as like a mindfulness thing. That was what Alexander was going for, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sensei. We've got a question here from Catalina Barrero. How can I help an anxious 11-year-old boy who's getting overwhelmed by online learning? His frustration frustrates me, and I don't know how to diffuse the pressure he feels. What advice do you have?
That's a great question. And it goes to one of the mindful games that I wanted to talk about a little bit on today, which is this idea of, is it helpful? So what we do when we are practicing, is it helpful, is we ask ourselves, we have to first get in a place of clarity, right? When we're in that place of ourselves being frustrated, like our child is frustrated on Zoom load, tough to see clearly, tough to make decisions out of a place of clarity and wisdom and discernment, easy to get caught into a place of reactivity. So that's why a short practice like what we just did right now is great to help us settle ourselves. And then we just go through a series of questions. Is it helpful to me right now? Is it helpful to the other person? Is it helpful to the community and the planet? So if your son is on Zoom overload, the question really is it helpful for him to be doing all of this Zooming right now? And then comes the question, is it the right time? So is it the right time to be doing all this Zooming? So I would encourage with the 11-year-old to really start thinking about the amount of time that is being spent online, and through a place of real discernment and being light on our feet and making changes, see, is there a way to actually change this a bit so that my son isn't going to get more stressed out from all of these great, opportunities we're giving them via Zoom. It's not that different from after-school activities during a non-pandemic time. Does that make sense to you?
I can't speak for Catalina, but it makes sense to me. Okay. Let me move on to John, who writes in, I feel like one of my biggest problems is trying to help in a way that I would want to be helped, rather than what the other person actually needs. How do I break through that instinct?
Just awareness. Remember, the key to meditation, the key to mindfulness is awareness. Just the fact that John is noticing that right now is an act of awareness. It's time to celebrate that and to know that once you're aware of something, what that thing is may not change, but your relationship to it changes forever. So he's aware of this situation where he's acting out of what he thinks is going to help him. It's a good common fixer mentality that all of us caregivers often have, but you're aware of it. And so then just pause before you do something, and you can go through the series of questions. Is it helpful to me? Is it helpful to them? Is it helpful to the community and planet? And even if the answer to all of that balances out to be yes, is it the right time? Because is it the right time is so important during this pandemic. Yeah, it might be really, really helpful to be on a very strict bedtime, but right now during the pandemic, is it the right time to relax those rules a bit? Yeah, we generally don't want our kids to eat the all macaroni and cheese diet, but right now during the pandemic, can we relax that a little bit? Is it the right time to really enforce that rule? Because remember, our kids are stressed out, and sometimes the things that we see in our kids as stress, or as I'm sorry, the things we see in our kids as defiant behavior or acting out are really signs of nervous system overwhelm, which goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, Dan. Really, for parents and caregivers and teachers, a basic understanding of the nervous system and how our bandwidth survival requires us to kind of narrow down our bandwidth and focus on things that we think are dangerous. And we have to really work at it to ease that up a little bit, relax, and get that broader perspective so we make our decisions about whether something's helpful from a place of clarity and wisdom as opposed to reactivity.
My son is never defined. He always does exactly what I ask him to do. Everything he's doing right now, I told him to do. He's not listening to me.
He's doing great.
Yeah, he's doing great. You're doing great, bud.
Yeah.
He's vaguely interested in that. Anyway, Ruzika 1974 asks, is there some magic word I can use when my 9-year-old wakes up in the night and cannot go back to sleep out of fear?
Yeah, I love you. Mommy's here. It's okay. Those are the magic words. The be in presence. Remember, we're talking about nervous system regulation. We're talking about fear. And there's several different steps to help down-regulate hyperarousal, down-regulate when you're overly upset. One of them, and we did a number of those in the meditation with respect to watching your thoughts or shifting to mindfulness of breathing or something like that. But others are connecting with the natural world and connecting with one another. We co-regulate each other. So that's why our mindfulness as a parent is so very important. So for the mom to just be there with the child, be present. I love you. Right now we're okay. And I'm going to be here with you. Those are the magic words. It's our presence that is the magic.
And let me sneak in one last question. When trying to be helpful, how can you recognize when you unconsciously move from helpful to fix-it mode?
Well, again, this goes back to why our own practice is so important. And what we tend to get a feeling in our body when something shifts. We tend to get a feeling in the body. It's kind of like a leaning forward feeling. It's often a matter of being tense. So when you start to notice this physical sensation of tension, that's a kind of a trigger of awareness to, time for me to take a little bit of a sanity break, to borrow your phrase, and go back and do a practice just like the one we did today, and then ground yourself and then go through your questions. Is this helpful? Where is it? Is it helpful for me, for the other people, for the planet? How does this fit in? And that's how we find discernment. But we can't engage in those types of analytical practices, like is it helpful, when our nervous systems are jacked up. So that's, our bandwidth narrows and it's tough to think clearly. So that's why these short moments of awareness, they interrupt us into our day when we notice the tension in our body, when we notice ourselves leaning forward and tightening up and wanting to fix it. Just pull back, relax, drop, settle back in. And then our bandwidth will widens so we can think about all this stuff and make a wise choice from a place of clarity and wisdom rather than reactivity.
Susan, great job. Really appreciate it, everybody. Check out Susan's book and the accompanying activity cards, Mindful Games. And we'll be back tomorrow with Narayan Helen Liebenson, the great teacher from Boston, Massachusetts. And just a quick reminder, as you know, we're giving free access to the 10% Happier app to healthcare workers. That includes doctors, nurses, custodians, techs, admin. And now we're expanding that to people who are in the food business. If you're working in a grocery store, or if you're driving a truck delivering food, or if you're delivering meals to people, 10%.com/care, 10%.com/care. Susan, thanks again. Great job. And stay safe, everybody. Stay home. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow with Narayan.
Thank you.